the live stream. So this is a public session, so just be mindful of that in terms of questions you ask. So I'm going to hand over to Ashley and Catherine. What I might just do is a quick check-in, and this is not a shaming exercise, but there was pre-reading for this session. If you did do the pre-reading and you've understood the materials, can you just put your hand up, just so that the team get a sense of who's done the reading, who's kind of where we're at, and who might need a little bit more info. So if you've done the reading, hand up. Okay, sweet. So I think you can take some of the bulk of it as read, but there might be just a few things that you might just need to touch on. So with that, I will hand over to you. And so, because we have started a bit late, if you need to go a little bit longer just to make sure that we get the conversation, that's fine, I hope, with everybody. Yep.
Thank you. And yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Godfrey. I am the Risk Advisor here at Council. So I am here today to talk to you about risk appetite. Just keep up. So today we are in the no phase. We are going to be providing you with information about risk appetite and setting our risk appetite for Council. There we go. So we will go through what your responsibilities are going to be, the fundamentals of what risk and risk appetite is, and why risk appetite is important for Council, and how we will be setting it. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please note them down and we can answer them at the end. So as our governors, we are going to be asking you to set the risk appetite for Council. So this is a critical responsibility because Council officers rely on risk appetite boundaries to make informed decisions and recommendations and manage risk across Council. It will also support us in our priorities of going for future growth, future fit for HDC and financial discipline. We did try to define our risk appetite back in 2023, but it didn't fully land, mainly because articulating risk appetite at the governance level is very challenging. So this process will be challenging, and at times it may make you uncomfortable. There will be differing opinions, and I just ask that everyone is respectful of the differing opinions. In saying that, some of you may also be asked to make some concessions so that we can reach a collective understanding of what our risk appetite is going to be. Ultimately, the reason this matters is simple. With clear guidance, Council officers can confidently make decisions and provide recommendations to you at the right risk appetite level. And that is the level that you are going to be providing us with. So as our governors, you understand at the table where you sit when you make decisions. So in setting our risk appetite, we are going to be providing Council officers where they need to sit at. So we are aware that there are varying levels of understanding about risk and risk appetite among you. So throughout this process of setting our risk appetite, we are here to help you. If at any point you have any questions, concerns, or want any assistance, whether that's today, tomorrow, next week, whenever it is, please reach out to Ashley and I, because we are here to help you through this process. So what is risk? Risk is, simply put, the effect of uncertainty on our objectives. In other words, risk is anything that could impact on our ability to deliver our outcomes. It is important to note that risk is not always bad or negative or something that we should shy away from. Risk can also be positive. Taking the right risks can help us create better value, encourage innovation, and improve our outcomes, while avoiding risk altogether can hold us back. If we become too risk adverse, we may limit progress and miss opportunities to improve our services or try new approaches. And when we really see problems is when we have unmanaged risk. So when risks aren't identified or properly managed, they can impact delivery, affect long-term sustainability, and ultimately undermine the trust of our community. So our goal is not to eliminate risk. It is to understand it, manage it well, and take the right risks in pursuit of our objectives. So if we accept that risk is a natural part of achieving our objectives, the next question becomes, how much risk are we willing to take? And that is where our risk appetite comes in. So risk appetite is the amount and type of risk that we are willing to accept, retain, or take on to achieve our objectives. It helps us guide us in how we make decisions across the organisation. In practice, it can help to think about risk appetite in three ways. So risk appetite tells us where we should embrace opportunities. In some areas, taking a measured level of risk is necessary if we want to be innovative or improve our outcomes. Risk appetite also tells us where we need to be careful and deliberate. So these are areas where we still move forward, but we do so with stronger oversight and controls in place. And risk appetite tells us where risk is simply unacceptable. So these are areas where we have very low tolerance, where we avoid those risks, or we have very, very tight controls in place. So risk appetite will provide the boundaries for our decision makers to work within. You set the risk appetite and we work within that appetite. But what are our risk appetite levels? So risk appetite is on a spectrum. A lower risk appetite reduces the likelihood of negative events and supports organisational stability. But being too cautious can result in missed opportunities, less innovation, and slower progress towards our goals. While at the other end, a higher risk appetite encourages innovation, transformation, and the pursuit of new opportunities, but it can also increase our exposure to potential negative outcomes. So we have 5 risk appetite levels across our spectrum here at Council. On the far left, we have adverse and conservative, and this represents low risk appetite. Here we prioritise avoiding risk, focusing on stability and caution. In the middle, we have measured, which represents a balanced approach. This is where we take carefully assessed risks to achieve our objectives. Moving to the right, we have justified, and this represents a higher risk appetite, but only where there is strong reasoning and controls in place to manage those risks effectively. And at the far right, we have open, which represents the highest risk appetite, where we are willing to accept greater uncertainty when the potential rewards justify it. But why does risk appetite matter? So having a defined risk appetite supports effective governance by ensuring our executive leadership team and you as our governors are aligned on acceptable and not acceptable risk. It will improve our decision making by providing consistent guidance to council officers making operational decisions, helping them to balance innovation and opportunity with careful risk management. It will strengthen accountability and clarity by setting transparent expectations, improving consistency in decisions, and clarify who is responsible. It will build community trust by demonstrating that we manage risk responsibly and transparently on behalf of our ratepayers. And risk appetite will clarify where we can take risk and where we have to avoid it. It will set the boundaries that guide how we take and manage risk across the organisation. And all of this goes towards supporting our priorities of going for growth, future fit HDC, and financial discipline. But how will you see risk appetite coming through? So full disclosure, this bit has not been set in stone yet, and it will evolve as we set our risk appetite and decide how best to incorporate it into our everyday operations. But the ultimate goal is to see risk appetite embedded in how we govern, manage, and communicate risk across council. And this could come through in the likes of our risk register, where each risk is assessed with reference to our risk appetite. It could come through in our reports, where our reports include a simple risk appetite statement. It will come through in our decision making, so risk appetite will guide our operational decisions. And there will most definitely be an escalation process. So if it's within appetite, it can be managed by council officers. If it's approaching our risk appetite limits, notify our people leaders and our group managers. If it's outside our appetite, that's when we need to escalate it to our executive leadership team, risk and assurance committee, and council. And in doing this, we can ensure that risk isn't just a concept, that it actively informs how we monitor, report, and make decisions about risk across the organisation. So setting our risk appetite. So your role as governors. So you are going to set our risk appetite for us. And we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to have an overall risk appetite statement for council. And then for each of the 16 risk categories in our risk management framework, we're going to have a risk appetite for each of those 16. So it's important to be clear that your role is not to solve or manage individual risks, concerns, or operational issues. You set the risk appetite. By setting the risk appetite, you'll provide a clear framework that allows council officers to make informed decisions and recommendations with confidence, balancing opportunities, innovation, and prudent risk management. But how are we going to do this? So tomorrow, you are going to be provided with a risk appetite survey. So this survey is your opportunity to share how you perceive risk, which will help us in setting our risk appetite. The survey is going to be electronic, and it's going to be emailed to you when it opens. You will have 3 weeks to complete it. We were going to have you completed in 2 weeks, but we have extended this out to 3 for you. So the survey has been built using the 16 risk categories in our risk management framework. In the survey, for each of our 16 risk categories, you will see a clear and brief description of what that risk category is. So what is governance risk? What is climate change risk? We're going to provide you with a hypothetical scenario that is relevant to Horowhenua and to our risk category. So this is designed to get you thinking about that risk category. You'll also be provided with some hypothetical trade-offs. So again, these are designed to help you think through the potential decisions that council officers can make. Now, these are not a full list of all the trade-offs. We've just provided you with a couple just to get you thinking. You'll also be provided with some hypothetical risks and consequences associated with the scenario and the risk category. And again, it won't be a full list of all the risks and consequences. There's just a few, again, just to help you with your thinking in that risk category. So that will set the scene for the risk category. What you will then have to do is you're going to have to make a choice. So for our 5 risk appetite levels, you are going to choose for each risk category what your risk appetite is. So are you going to be adverse, conservative, measured, justified, or open? And then you're going to have a free text box. And that's where you can provide any comments, thoughts, opinions about that risk category and why you made the decision for your risk appetite level. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of putting information in that box, because that is going to go towards helping us write our risk appetite statements. So I'll just reiterate that these are just scenarios, and it is not for you to solve them. We just need to know where your risk appetite sits. We are going to ask that you complete your surveys individually. And if at any point you have any questions, concerns, want any assistance completing your survey, reach out to Ashley and myself, and we can help you through this process. Next Wednesday, after your council meeting, I will be available in the anteroom. I'll be there all afternoon, so if anyone wants to pop in, please do so. If that doesn't work for you, get a hold of us and we can set up a time and meet and go through everything with you.
Can I just jump in there and just suggest that the reason the session after council meeting next week is useful, because you would have been through a live agenda, you might be thinking about these things. There's obviously a risk section in each and every order paper, and so it might just be helpful if live in the moment that you've got access to Catherine to ask any questions you have, because this is going to be a little bit of a onerous exercise. Like it's going to need some energy, and it's going to need some thinking power. You need your brain power to really help us create this tool. This important tool for us that will inform a huge amount of how we work in our work programs.
Should we hand these out? Okay, so when we complete the survey, unfortunately the electronic survey needs to be completed in one go. We couldn't find a platform where we could save it and then come back to it. So what Ashley is doing is she's providing you with a handout, and this is a copy of the survey.
So this here is exactly the survey, but it's for you to work through at your own pace, read it, complete it if you choose to use this in a reference guide, put your notes on it, and then you can go to the electronic and put it in if you're ready to do so. If you choose to do it this way, if not, you're welcome to just go straight online. But this is
We've had this conversation, and we think it's about an hour. But if you need, just because of the way in which it is covering 16 different areas, so it's going to require some thought across all of those different areas. But that's why we have scheduled the session after council next week. But also, obviously, some people will work through it potentially quicker, and some people might need longer. You might have questions. I mean, we're not expecting everyone to be experts at this process, and so this really is just an important opportunity for you to lean into this and have your say, try and influence where the average or the collective view of the 13 members around this table land in terms of that risk appetite. And as the kids say, you snooze, you lose. So this is the opportunity to input.
Can I just ask a question? First of all, thank you so much. This is great, and really appreciate you bringing this forward and us having the opportunity to do this. As an elected representative, what is the scope in terms of going out to our residents to say, what do you think, in order to be able to have their input and make a decision based on, my area and the people that I represent?
do you want to answer? I've got a thought on that, which is that this is really a tool for us as a governance table. There is opportunity, I think, for our community to see that, to comment and feed into the implementation of this, and that's primarily going to be through the long-term plan. So if, for example, we land with a risk appetite that says we've got a low tolerance for risk around our consents, so consent compliance is really, really important, but we have a high level of tolerance for risk around infrastructure projects, and then that is reflected in terms of, well, we're gonna in the long-term plan put in a project that will obviously require a whole lot of different consents, but we put a really low budget or something, then that will come through the long-term plan. And so it's not the best example, but I'm thinking it live. And so I think our public and our community will be able to see how we've used the tool and how we've applied it, and be able to comment at a kind of a practical implementation level. In terms of getting community input into the settings that are reflected in the risk appetite, I think what we're asking is that as a governance table, it's about your personal appetite based on your comfort level in terms of your representation of the community. So that was a whole lot of a word salad, but did you have anything you wanted to?
I would agree with what Councillor Jennings has said. The other point that I would make is this will come back through risk and assurance and then to the council table for adoption. So community will absolutely have the ability to talk to the agenda item if they disagreed or agreed with the approach that the table was taking. So there's that option as well. Yeah.
And look, there are people who are very interested in risk out there in our community and would look at this and go, "You guys, I can't believe you've landed here in terms of your risk appetite. What are you thinking?" So there will absolutely be that opportunity, both through risk and assurance and a council meeting, for those views to be able to be expressed.
Absolutely. And so we've got one slide, I think one or two more slides, and then a little bit of a showcase, which may also answer that question for you.
But that was my next question. Were you ready for questions or not?
Cool. So after the workshop today, tomorrow the survey will open. And like I said, you'll have 3 weeks to complete it. So please reach out if you've got any concerns. As you start completing your surveys, we're going to be analysing all of the information coming in. Is there any consensus in any of our risk areas? Is there a wide variety in any of our risk areas? We'll then come back together in another workshop and we will discuss the results. When there is a consensus, what we'll do is we'll try and formulate the risk statement or the risk appetite statement for you and see how you feel about it. Where there's no consensus, that's when we're going to have a discussion and we're going to have to try and come to a consensus. Because if we don't, we can't set the risk appetite. And if we don't set the risk appetite, council officers are not going to know the boundaries within which they have to work.
Sorry, just a part-side question. Why didn't we get consensus last time? And how did we manage to continue through our triennium without having a consensus? Why it's so important now?
So what I would say is that the way in which we approached it last time probably didn't quite meet the mark, and where we were finding challenges as a table to kind of get that consensus, instead of pushing through that, we didn't, and we stopped that process. Good practice is that we set a risk appetite and that we review that on an annual basis, which is what we're looking to do going forward. You can operate without a risk appetite. It just doesn't provide you as a table clarity or officers clarity where you sit on certain topics. So you're coming in a little bit blind in some areas, but you can make a gauge as an officer. So you absolutely can do it, but best practice is that we have a risk appetite. Yeah, and the process in which we went through didn't quite make the mark, which is why we're going with a different angle this time, and we've renewed and kind of reviewed that process and how we're bringing it to the table.
I think Nina, sorry to jump in front of you, Nola. I think in terms of that background from the previous term, there were examples where there was quite a split table, and there were also sometimes where the table felt surprised by something because there hadn't been a previous articulation of the expectation or the comfort level. And so I think that the reason that we're saying that this is important now is that this will be just a very useful tool, and it's not really until we see how it's actually then implemented and utilised, particularly through the long-term plan process, that I think you'll start to see the benefits. I think you might have a different experience that you did in the previous term. Hopeful anyway. Yeah.
Right, so it took me 3 goes to get my questions together to read this, because I can see it's a complex piece of work, so my congratulations on getting this far. So the first couple of questions I've got is around terminology to make sure I'm understanding what you're talking about. So when you use the word controls, are you talking about compliance enforcement? So that's the first question.
Absolutely. So controls can be anything that we use in order to control, mitigate the risk. So anything that's put in place, and that can be.
So
that doesn't necessarily mean it's compliance related. It can be any item or action that is undertaken to control or mitigate that risk.
Yeah, so we're talking bylaws. You've got dog control laws, those sorts of things.
Not necessarily. So it could. It could be a relationship, or it could be.
You've got 16 sources of what page number? I'm just reading from the brief, like on my notes, is that you talk about you've got at the moment listed 16 sources of where you've got appetite, where you've got risk, and so we're deciding whether we're going to have them adverse or the different things. But when you're talking about controls, that compliance comes at a cost. So it impacts on long term. So that's why I was wanting to get clarity of the terminology right at the beginning when it talks about the controls, because and the example you've got in the paper is around an enforcement compliance for a cafe. So but to me there's a huge number of compliance issues that council staff have to deal with on a reasonable number of bylaws. It's not even excluding dog control and liquor and those sorts of things. So therefore that then I see the issue of impacting on a long-term plan, on budgets. So that was why I was wanting to make sure I understood that controls could include the enforcement action, because if you're going to have high risk and therefore you don't want high risk and you want to have people complying, you've then got to budget more money for compliance. So see where I'm coming from? Does it make sense? And the last one was there a reason why you didn't come with real examples the council's facing at the moment as opposed to just made up ones? Was there a risk factor there?
In terms of answering your first question, yes, controls could be compliance related that relate to additional funds, but controls can also be outside of compliance related as well. Why did we use scenarios that weren't real life scenarios? We did that last time and we couldn't get past trying to fix the problem instead of thinking about the appetite. So what we're trying to do is make them as realistic to a council that would happen in an item or an issue that would happen here, but not something that's currently
in place to help your mind think about it in a way where you're not trying to think about fixing the problem, you're thinking about it in an appetite sense, which is what we didn't do last time, and it didn't quite work. So we thought move away from real life examples that are currently happening.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Really, what we were trying to do, and Catherine's reiterated a lot here, is please reach out if you're not quite understanding it or have any questions. We're happy to sit with you one-on-one and go through this. And we know this is going to be challenging. We know that this is foreign language to a lot of people as well. And so when we've gone through this process, we've tried to make sure that we've made it as easy as possible to really narrow that you're thinking about appetite versus anything else.
I think it's probably just important to say, because risk is essentially owned collectively by this table, by the organisation, and although we've got Risk and Assurance Committee, which provides a focal point for getting assurance around our risk management systems and frameworks and whether the controls across all of these things are operating as intended. Ultimately, we do, as a council, as a governing table, we get regular risk reporting through the organisational performance report, and risk is just a necessary focus point for the whole council table as we make our decisions. I mean, it's in there in every single agenda paper. So it's really important that the risk appetite statement reflects the collective views and wishes of this table on behalf of the community. Anyway.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly show you the survey so that you are aware and how that works, and then happy to take any further questions. Grayson.
And then we're going to run through the example. Yep. Okay.
Sorry, thank you. When you go in to complete the survey, this is exactly what you're going to see. So we've just got a little bit of an introduction page that's covered what was spoken of today. We're asking that you put your name in, otherwise we don't know who's completed which survey. And then, as you'll see in your handout, the first one we've got in there is governance. And all we've done is copied and paste. So we'll have the definition of what governance risk is. We will have the scenario. We'll have the trade-offs, the risk and consequences, and then you'll be asked which risk appetite level best reflects Council's tolerance for governance and probability risk when balancing transparency, political representation and timely decision making. And all you've got to do is literally click which one you want and then put in your comments. Click next, head on to the next one.
It's fair to say, Catherine, isn't it, that some of these will be quite easy because they'll just reflect a gut reaction. Like you'll get a gut feel and you'll be able to go quite quickly, and some will require a little bit more consideration and thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As we said earlier, it's going to be challenging. It might be uncomfortable, but we need you to set our risk appetite. We need to know whether we're a council that's going to be lower risk, higher risk, somewhere in the middle. And I can't sort of emphasise enough for you to please put in your comments. We sort of need to know how you've come to your decision, why you've selected that particular risk appetite.
A lot of those, like Sam said, for me, a lot of those choosing those things aren't particularly going to be more intuitive rather than like I'll be going because I think so in the comments. So, I mean, if you're all good with that, that's fine. But I don't look for an essay because there won't be one.
No, if that's, we're totally comfortable if that's how you'd like to answer it, and you're sitting here as a representative from the community. So, as we say, it is your gut, it's your intuition, it's what you feel. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't need any fluffy language. Just be blunt, be upfront, be honest. If you just want to put in there because I think so, that's fine.
I think the team have a pretty good handle on those elected members who are masters of brevity and those who are verbose. So yeah.
Cool. So does anyone have any questions about this, the process, risk appetite?
Just think it's great from a new council's perspective. It's certainly going to expand and increase, my understanding of the whole complexity of council. And the thinking and the discussions that will come from it, I think, are going to be really valuable. So I think it's a really good tool, and I like the idea of that survey, and really appreciate that 3 weeks and giving us the time to really delve deep into this because of wider commitments, and also some things you'll want to look into and get a bit more understanding of, and others you'll go, yeah, I know that. So thanks.
Just a statement of the obvious and acknowledging, Mike, that in terms of the comments, how much we engage, which is fine, but it's really essential that every single person takes part in this, because it must be the collective view of the table. So we've got 3 weeks, which is good, plenty of time, but we all need to be part of it.
He said there's a fairly good chance he'll complete the survey. So, team, is there any further? Oh yes, no, we're doing the example. Yeah. Team, do you want to work through one now, or do you want to discuss the example in the pre-reading? Like what are you guys keen to up there, and then I'll table wise. Where's the comfort level?
I had a question, but I realised we're talking about appetite, and I think that's what I'm going to keep bringing my brain back to, because here's me going back and looking through the papers. I want to see all the advantages if I choose one over another, and it's the trade-offs, and so it's sitting down, taking our time, because it's about appetite I have, not what the benefits would be in choosing something over something else.
Absolutely agree.
Personally, I see little value in working through a group discussion around where we land on risk, because actually we all have a different method for arriving at the thought of where we are, that there is no way I'm going to convince Alan to align with me to reach a consensus. So I'd rather go in blind, and everyone uses their own individual methodology to it might feel a bit like that actually by the end of it, to reach where they land, because actually the essence of it will come out through the calibration of what the total sum looks like. So I'm just saying I'd rather move on.
Does anyone disagree with Clint's position on that?
No, that was going to be my question, because the other side of that is that the example on page 11 in the pre-reading is also one of the ones in here, and the opportunity to work through just to get our heads around the jargon, to say, look, I think this, but it depends on this word or whatever. So the real life example of working through one of these here and now. So I'm not pushing for it, but I'm just saying there might be value. We have a collective understanding of the process of working it through and what the words mean and so on.
So what I'm going to suggest is that I think based on the comfort reaction to Clint's suggestion around the table and just seeing that, is that what we might do is we won't do that live example today, but what we will do is that we'll use that opportunity next Wednesday following the council meeting to perhaps run through one, just if there are any residual questions around the terminology or the process, and I think that will give people an opportunity to reflect on the material provided to them, the survey, and then because people will move at different speeds as well. So if you're comfortable with that approach, I think that's what we'll do.
And I'll just raise again, if anyone ever wants to reach out to discuss anything, if you want to bounce off of us, we can sit next to you, help you complete the survey. You will be doing all the answering. But if you want any help, please reach out.
Is there any further comments, questions, wrap up from you guys? No? All right, well, thank you so much for introducing us and taking us through and supplementing the pre-reading materials. We look forward to the survey being circulated tomorrow, and so we've got a good period, and hopefully there can be some reminders and prompts as well, depending on how we're going with the response to the survey. Thank you very much. All right. I don't think we need another break, if that's okay. I think we'll jump straight into... Oh, we're going to turn off the recording, and we are going to get James and Daniel back up to the table, if that's all right. Yeah.